Many comic creators feel the pressure to take on way more than they can manage, and when you do this, you will 100% burn out. Your comic will stall and it will probably not get finished. But in this video, I'm going to show you what actually matters so that you can cut out all the noise and progress with your comic consistently. And if you're new, I'm John, a comic creator from the UK, and you're a comic creator who just wants to get their comic finished. And I love helping other comic creators do that, which is exactly what this channel is for, so don't forget to subscribe. And if you stick around to the end, I'll give you a roadmap that you can use to navigate so that you know what to focus your... Bloody hell, it's a big pigeon. And if you stick around to the end, then I will give you a roadmap that you can use to navigate so that you know what to focus your time and energy on. But before then, I'm going to show you what you, me, and every other comic creator does that leads us to Burnout City. And the first thing we do wrong is we overload ourselves. You know that feeling when you sit down to work on your comic, but everything feels overwhelming and you just don't know where to start? So you end up doing pretty much anything else other than working on your comic? That's probably because you're overloaded. Think about this. You've got your comic, which is a huge time-consuming long-term project, the supplementary art and illustrations you do of your OCs, your social media channel or channels that you're trying to grow, your art practice and studies so you can continue to improve, your side projects that act as short-form comics like a one-pager, primarily for social media. And there's probably more that you do that I haven't even thought about. Now imagine that each of those things that I've laid out is one of these comic books. And this bag represents both your time and energy that you have available. It feels like you've got a lot of space in here, so you fill it with things to do, like creating a load of character drawings to post online and share with your community. And you commit a few hours every week to learn so you can continue to improve. And you want to grow on social media, so you create content every few days or weeks. And for a lot of you, you tend to do more than one project, so you have multiple things to manage. And we haven't even put our comic in here yet, and now this barely fits. Sorry, comics. I don't want to damage them. It's not just that we don't have the space for these tasks, it's that each task has a different weight to them. Doing a single drawing of one of your characters is a lightweight task. Doing lots of them adds up, and the task gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And the comic itself is a big, heavyweight task. So what does this metaphor mean? Well, not all tasks are created equal, and this is where the trap is. We all know, or should know by now, that our comic is a beast of a task to take on. It takes a long time to make a comic, and it feels like it's never ending. Carrying this comic around is going to make your arms ache after a while. Now imagine stacking these comics on top of that and trying to carry that around one-handed all day. Even a pure athlete like me would struggle. This is what it's like to have all of these tasks that you give yourself. And the difficulty is we often don't know which tasks to take with us and which tasks to leave until much later. So here's what I want you to do. So if you do illustrations for your characters, or you write side plots and spin-off stories, or you're trying to grow on social media by creating artwork for that platform, write it all down. Now look at your list and put an X next to everything that isn't directly tied to you completing your comic. These are all distractions from your primary goal. And although doing those illustrations and writing that extra lore for your comic is really fun, it isn't really moving the needle at all. And eventually you'll start to feel the weight of the comic pressing on you over time. And you're going to feel like you're going nowhere with it. Which is true, you're not, because you're being distracted by all the other stuff that you're doing. So, when you sit down to work on your comic, if the thing that you're doing is not primarily working on your comic, you're not working on your comic. It seems harsh, but making the comic is the single most important thing you can do as a comic creator. And so many of us do whatever we can to actually avoid working on it. And we do all these little tasks that feel productive, but they're not. The reason this is so common for comic creators is because overloading your plate with tasks that are sort of but not really related to your comic is a distraction away from the scary questions that you have in your head right now. What if the comic doesn't turn out well? What if you can't replicate the comic that's in your head onto the page? What if you screw it up? These are really scary questions, and they can overwhelm us to the point that we don't actually want to work on the comic. That's why those distractions are so easy to give into, because doing a one-off illustration is safe. Writing a spin-off to a comic that you haven't even finished yet is safe. These are relatively lightweight tasks. But facing up to a comic that's going to be judged and opined on, that's scary and heavy as fuck. I was talking to a member of the Discord community about this quite recently, and I told him that 100% of his audience are going to love his comic. The reason that I know this is because the members of the audience who are rude or mean or judgmental don't matter. they're not that person's audience. So they basically don't exist. Which means that by not making your comic and giving into those distractions or overloading yourself with tasks, you're depriving your audience of a really great story, and that audience is going to love it. Now, that sounds quite delusional on the face of it, right? Of course, not everybody is going to love your comic, but that's only true if you think that everybody is your audience, because they're not. There are millions of comic readers out there, and you only really need to find 1,000 or 2,000 of them to make your comic a success. In the grand scheme of things, that's a tiny percentage. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should be deaf to critique, but a critique needs to be asked for by the creator. If someone comes out of nowhere to critique your comic, you have every right as the creator to ignore them, even if what they say is correct or comes from a good place. So, get into the mindset that people are going to love this rather than hate it, and just reduce the stakes for yourself. The comic doesn't need to be such a heavy lift, and it doesn't need to be something that you should be actively avoiding. The comic doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to please everyone. In fact, it shouldn't please everyone. It should please the people who are going to love it, and the only way that's going to happen is if you finish it. My comic, Flowers and Shadows, is based on Greek mythology. There are going to be some people who will love it and some people who will hate it. And for those who hate it, that's fine. There will be a few of those people who hate it who feel compelled to tell me how much they hate it, and I will respectfully ignore them because they're not my audience. Now, this isn't an easy mindset to adopt, and it will take practice. If you want some supportive accountability for this, or you just want to hang out with other comic creators, then join my monthly live stream on Patreon. Or if you want a bit more personalized and focused support, you can join my one-to-one mentorship. There are limited spaces available for that, so if you're interested, then click the link in the description. Now, the two most common things that comic creators do are they worry about their audience's reactions, and they distract themselves with side quests instead of working on their comics. But sometimes, even if we don't do those two things, we often overload ourselves by the choices we make for the comic itself. And there are two big choices that we make that will overload ourselves, and it will lead us to burnout. The first is that your comic is too long. A lot of comic creators will scope out a comic that's going to take them about 10 years to create simply because of the volume of pages they need to produce. And the second is that the art style they've chosen is slightly too advanced for their current skill set, which not only means that each page is going to take them a long time to create, but each page is going to be extremely difficult for them to complete. So I guess the answer is to shorten the comic and simplify the art style, right? Well, yeah, actually, that's exactly what you should do. But how do you do it? What you want to do is go through your story and pick out all the bits that don't progress the narrative forwards. Be ruthless with this. Your aim is to cut out as much as you possibly can, no matter how much you might love a particular character's arc or a particular side plot. Get rid of it all. Don't worry, this is just an exercise, so really go for it. Once you've done that, read through your comic again with all the stuff taken out. Does it still achieve what it set out to achieve? Does it still tackle the themes you wanted to tackle? Does the hero still achieve their goal? You'll be surprised by how much of the main story remains intact despite the fact that you've removed so much. And with that knowledge, I strongly suggest you keep the newly edited version as it is. Don't worry, the cut stuff can appear later on. You can do prequels and sequels and spin-offs all the live long day. But have the patience and discipline to work on the main comic first. And if you can make the load lighter by reducing the page count, then absolutely do that. Because not only will it make the comic easier to complete, but you'll realize whether you actually want to stay in this universe or not. Imagine that you're 200 pages deep into your comic and you still have another 300 pages left to go. And now imagine that you're starting to get a little bit bored of this universe that you've created, or a bit bored of the characters, or a bit bored of the style. Now imagine having spent all that time doing those 200 pages and building an audience up who are starting to really latch onto those characters and that universe. Well, now you're stuck, because the pressure is on to see it through, not because you want to, but because you have to. It goes from a passion to a chore, and it will really start to make you resent it. So protect your future self and the future of your comic by cutting out as much as you possibly can. Now, I didn't touch too much on art style in this video because I've already done a video on that relatively recently, which I'll link to in the description of this video. But the general idea is to simplify your art style as much as you can. It's basically the same mindset that you will have when it comes to editing your comic story. How small can your inputs be for your art to produce the best outputs that you can be actually proud of? That's the kind of thing that you're looking for. Every artist wants their comic to be pristine and cinematic and gorgeous. But if the trade-off to that goal is a comic that's going to take you 10, 15 years, I don't know if that's worth it. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that it's not. Overloading, whether it's by the number of tasks you put on yourself or the weight of those tasks on your shoulders, is extremely common. And it's really hard to manage. So if you're struggling with this sort of thing, or you just haven't really been able to make much progress with your comic recently, then here's a roadmap for you. First, get rid of every single task that isn't working on your comic. You need to lighten your load. Next, refer to the list you made earlier and number them. Number 1 is your comic, but everything else should be in order of importance. Now, only you can really decide what's important to you as an individual, but if you're looking at the list thinking that everything is important, I've got you. What you want to think about is what tasks are going to get you towards your goals faster. Let's assume that your goal is to get a comic out there, improve your skills as an artist, and build an audience for your comic with the hope of making some money and maybe doing this full time. That's a pretty ambitious goal, and there are quite a few moving parts to it, so we need to prioritize. So this is what it looks like in terms of the amount of time and effort you spend on each task. The comic itself is 80% of your time. This really should be the vast majority of what you do until you finish it. Studies and improvement is 15%. Maybe one study session a week or every 2 weeks, depending on the time you have available. And social media is 5%. One post per week is absolutely fine, and don't overthink it. In the early stages, it's just about getting used to posting and not worrying too much about the results. As you get better at it, you can increase the frequency. And honestly, I'd commit to this ratio for at least the next 12 months or until your comic is finished, if it takes you less than 12 months. Then once your comic is done, you can move these percentages around. Remember, nothing has to be fixed. You can be flexible. So maybe they look something like this for a few months while you work on your next comic. So the comic is 50%, studies 20%, social media 30%. This is going to look wildly different to each of you, and you don't have to do these percentages whatsoever. Make up your own ones that make sense to you and your personal goals. The point is, regardless of the specificity of your goal, you should commit the vast majority of the time you have available to finishing your comic. Everything else can follow that. Don't fall into the trap of overcommitting to other tasks or commitments that take your time and energy away from your comic. And remind yourself that your people will love your comic. Everybody else is just noise. And if you are struggling with art style for your comic, then watch this video next. Don't forget to check out the Patreon if you want to talk about your comic specifically with me. I'm always keen to see how other people work and what they're working on. Now, stop watching YouTube videos and go and work on your comic.